Hi, my name is Angie Litchy, and I'm a Crow Wing County Master Gardener volunteer. I'm at the Northland Arboretum today, and I want to talk to you about how to prune an apple tree. Whether you're a backyard grower with a couple of trees, or you're just dabbling in starting your own orchard, this is a necessary maintenance task everyone should be doing. So why do we prune trees? Well, in essence, it's really about maintaining a healthy tree as well as getting quality fruit from the tree.
We will want to remove the 3Ds: disease, dead, and damaged wood. By doing so, we can refocus the tree's energy on producing healthier, more productive growth.
So in order to produce that high quality fruit, we want to, in essence, harvest the sun. We're going to look at needing the carbohydrates from the sun to help the tree grow. So with that, we really want to try to capture about 60 to 70% of the sun within the tree canopy. The more sunlight we have, the higher the yield, which is great news. We'll have a redder apple within the tree if it's exposed to at least 70% of that sunlight. If we're looking at the good fruit size, we really want to have a 50% exposure to that sunlight. And lastly, if you're looking at the bud growth for the apple trees, we need at least 30%. So in order for us to get this sunlight into the tree, we're going to be using pruning and training strategies. Now, I'm not going to get into training today, but just so you know what it is, it's basically implementing strategies to help shape the tree. So what we're doing is we're looking for a tree that's shaped as a conical shape or Christmas tree shape. So you're going to have the smaller branches at the top and you're going to have the longer branches towards the bottom. So by implementing these training and pruning strategies, we'll be able to open up this canopy again to harvest that sunlight. So when do we prune apple trees? We really want to prune apple trees at the end of winter. We want to make sure that those cold temperatures have passed by, and we want to be able to avoid the winter damage to the trees. We want to prevent that winter injury like the trunk splitting or leaf bud injury, things like that. When you're pruning a tree, you're making a wound on that tree and it opens it up for disease spores to get in. But since the temperatures are cooler, below freezing, that will keep that at bay. We want to be able to prune every year. It's important that we remove those 3Ds as well as maintaining that shape of the tree to enable that sunlight to penetrate. We want to make sure that we're not cutting off more than 25% of the tree. If we get too aggressive with the pruning, we're going to have more vegetative growth and less fruiting production. If you do have an older neglected tree, you're going to want to focus on doing your pruning cuts over about a 3-year window. So the tools that we use, we're going to want to use the hand pruning shears, bypass shears, and this is going to cut the limbs and branches that are less than 3/4 inch diameter. Next up is your long handled loppers. This is going to be for those cuts that are 1 to 1.5 inches in diameter. Some folks like to call these your Cindy loppers. Today I don't have a hand pruner saw with me, but this in essence is one. Just picture a handle right here without this long extension pole. So this particular device is for your taller, higher up pruning that you need to do. This, as well as the hand saw, is going to be focused on those limbs and branches that are greater than 1.5 inches in diameter. If you want, you could also use a ladder. If you're not comfortable on the ladder, just make sure that you have somebody either help you or you could pay an arborist to come out and prune your tree for you. Remember, keep your tools nice and sharp and clean. If you happen to be pruning off a diseased branch, you want to make sure that you're cleaning it before you continue on with pruning your tree. To clean, you can use a 10% solution of bleach with water, and then you let it set for 10 seconds or so. And you want to make sure that you're cleaning between trees as well. Let's talk about the different types of pruning cuts. We have the heading cut, otherwise called the terminal cut. And this is really a straight cut that's perpendicular to the length of the branch. Oftentimes we're going to use this to head off the tops of trees, or if we're removing branches and shoots that we don't necessarily want growth to come back. The other cut is called the Dutch cut or bevel. That is a diagonal cut, and it really encourages new branch growth. It's about 1/4 inch above the bud, and it's at a 45-degree angle. So how do you prune? Well, there's different pruning strategy. It's going to be based on your tree size as well as the density or how many trees you have in that area. When you're looking at the rootstock, whether it's a dwarf tree, a semi-dwarf tree, or a standard tree, that's going to help determine your strategy as well as, again, how close your trees are. Today we're going to focus on pruning in a low density, which is just a one or two few trees, with a standard or semi-dwarf tree. So the specific strategy that we're going to use today is a central leader system. In the central leader system, we want a leader trained to be the dominant leader. We want to remove any competing branches or shoots for that leader, as well as shaping the tree in that nice Christmas tree shape. And ideally, in the central leader system, we're going to want to have tiers of scaffolding. So you're going to see a distinct tiering system within the tree. So here's the steps that we're going to use for today's pruning. First, we're going to want to assess the tree for the 3Ds. We're going to look for that diseased, dead, and damaged wood.
We will want to remove any blackened bark, shepherd's crooks, which is a sign of fire blight, breaks or splints, brittle wood with peeling bark, or mushrooms.
We're going to be looking for water sprouts and suckers. Those are my easiest to target because they're very obvious to me, but the suckers are going to be around the tree, the base of the tree. There's going to be shoots that are coming straight out. And then water sprouts are going to be those vertical branches. When you remove them, it's really freeing up that canopy space. Another easy one to target are your inward and downward growing branches. You want to remove any branches or spurs that are going in those directions. Again, it frees up the canopy for that sunlight. So when I'm looking at assessing this tree, I don't see anything in particular as it relates to the 3Ds. It looks like a fairly healthy tree. Let's point out the sucker. This is an example of a sucker right here that we could just prune right off. It actually was rather large at one point in time, so we could just try to cut that whole branch down. So looking for those water sprouts, again, those vertical branches. Here's a good example. Another example could be this little guy right here. Looking at the downward branches, here's an example of a downward branch. If this were to fruit, it's going to be heavy and the limb could break. An inward tree or branch, nice example right here that could go. The next area that we're going to want to look at are cross branches. We want to make sure that we're avoiding any rubbing of branches between trees. That could open up wounds. Specifically, we want to look for any branches that might be competing in the same space. If you have two branches, you want to pick or choose the one with the best angle. Again, we're looking for an angle that's between 45 to 75 with the ideal angle at 60 degrees. The other aspect is the branch strength. So if we have a little twig that's fairly weak versus a nice strong branch, you're going to want to choose that, get rid of that little branch.
The more vertical the branch, the more vigorous it is. The closer the branch is to 90 degrees, it will have excessive fruiting shoot growth, putting a lot of weight on that branch, risking it to break. We want the right balance between vegetative growth and fruiting shoot growth.
When looking at the tree angles, this particular branch has a nice angle. This one in particular might be closer to that flat angle, at least up until you get here. So this one is debatable, but if it continued on down this way, we would probably want to look at that as a target. All right, the next branch I'm targeting is this guy right here. At least from this point down, it is downward facing. I mean, there's a couple areas that come up, but I think that that's a good cut. I'm going to take this whole guy off here. So we got an upward and a downward. So the last cut that we're going to do would be a heading cut right off of that leader. We want to be able to top off the top few inches of the tree, and this will help control the tree height over the years. You want to make sure that you're not taking off typically no more than 18 inches.
When disposing of branches, you want to make sure if you have diseased branches that you're not composting them. Be sure not to burn them either because it could get spores in the air. I would just throw them in a waste pile. For non-diseased branches, you can compost those, chip them, or recycle them, whichever you choose.
This is the basics of pruning an apple tree.
We're looking forward to the growing season and a great fruit harvest this year. If you have questions, be sure to give the Master Gardener hotline a call. Thanks for joining me today.